For 700 years, visitors to a small cathedral in northern Europe would tilt their heads slightly as they entered, compensating unconsciously for what their eyes told them was wrong. The columns don't quite stand vertical. The nave curves ever so gently to one side. The whole structure seems to lean, as if the weight of centuries has slowly pulled it away from true. Guides would smile knowingly and explain, medieval builders, you see, weren't perfect. The foundations settled. The mathematics were crude. A charming mistake frozen in stone. But mistakes don't align with constellations, and this cathedral points to something the church spent centuries trying to erase.
The cathedral stands in a landscape of mist and morning fog, built in the year 1247 during the height of Gothic architectural achievement. This was an era when master builders understood forces and weights with an intuition that seems almost supernatural. They raised stone impossibly high. They filled walls with glass that should have shattered under its own weight. They created spaces that made people whisper even when empty. These weren't simple stonemasons. They were mathematicians, geometers, members of closely guarded guilds that passed knowledge from master to apprentice in hushed workshops, away from the ears of church authorities and royal courts. The cathedral we're about to explore was commissioned by a bishop whose name has been carefully scrubbed from most records. Only his seal remains, pressed into lead, hidden in the foundation stone. The building took 32 years to complete. 17 master craftsmen worked on it, and when it was finished, people noticed immediately that something was off. The central aisle doesn't run straight east to west, as tradition demands. Instead, it curves almost 3 degrees to the north. The pillars lean. The rose window, when sunlight passes through it, casts its colored light not onto the altar, but onto a blank section of floor several feet to the side. For centuries, this was dismissed as incompetence and embarrassment. A beautiful building, yes, but flawed. No one thought to measure it properly until 1893. In the autumn of 1893, a young architect named Henrik Voss arrived at the cathedral with surveying equipment and an unusual commission. He had been hired by a wealthy antiquarian who'd become obsessed with Gothic architecture and wanted detailed measurements of every crooked building in Europe. The antiquarian believed that structural flaws could reveal information about medieval construction techniques. Voss spent 3 weeks measuring. He used plumb lines and transits. He recorded angles down to fractions of a degree. He mapped shadows at different times of day. And what he found made him set down his instruments and simply stare at the stones around him. The cathedral wasn't crooked because of settling or poor engineering. Every angle, every lean, every supposedly accidental curve was mathematically precise. The building was designed this way, intentionally. But designed to do what? Pause for emphasis, gentle pacing. Voss became obsessed. He returned the following spring, this time with astronomical charts and a colleague who specialized in archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples aligned their monuments with celestial events. Together, they made a discovery that would take them years to fully understand. The cathedral was a compass, but not one that pointed north. It pointed to the stars. On the night of the winter solstice, if you stand in a specific spot on the cathedral floor, now marked by centuries of wear, you can look up through the rose window and see the constellation Draco, the dragon, framed perfectly in colored glass. Many cathedrals marked solstices and equinoxes. The church allowed that. But Draco carried a dangerous meaning. In the 13th century, the church taught that Earth stood motionless at the center of creation, surrounded by perfect, eternal heavens. The stars were fixed, placed by God, unchanging since the beginning of time.
But ancient astronomers knew this was not true. Babylonian records, Greek observations, and Arabic translations preserved a troubling fact. The stars slowly moved. The pole star changed. The sky itself drifted over vast spans of time. This phenomenon, axial precession, meant the universe was far older than Scripture suggested and operated by mathematical laws rather than constant divine adjustment. This knowledge was dangerous. To acknowledge it openly was heresy, and so it went underground, preserved in secret libraries, whispered in monasteries, and taught quietly among master builders. 4,000 years before the cathedral was built, Draco had contained the pole star, the center around which the heavens turned. To align a cathedral with Draco in the 13th century was to point backward in time, to acknowledge deep ages that contradicted official doctrine. Voss discovered something even more unsettling. The cathedral didn't align with Draco as it appeared in his own era, but with where it had been centuries earlier. The curve of the nave and the precise lean of the structure mapped the movement of the stars themselves. This required astronomical records spanning generations, calculations not supposed to exist before Copernicus. A level of knowledge medieval Europe officially denied possessing, but the builders had possessed it. Further clues were hidden throughout the cathedral. Carvings along the columns featured geometric symbols absent from church iconography. Floor tiles near the altar formed a labyrinth encoding the precession of the equinoxes in spirals within spirals. And beneath the floor, sealed into the foundation stone, Voss uncovered a copper plate, green with age, etched with star positions and dates reaching thousands of years before Christ. The builders had known. The earth was ancient. The stars moved. The universe followed laws humans could understand.